It's the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name is Jacqui Cooper and welcome to the show. Everton have done it again at Craven Cottage. What is it about David Moyes' Everton that just comes back to haunt Fulham and Marco Silva time and time again? We started so strongly. We were on fire. It was liquid football. Our attacking was firing on all cylinders. But alas, 2 late goals, courtesy of Keenan Dewsbury Hall, what we would give to have a player like him in our ranks. And yeah, it was what could have been for Fulham yet again. Europe on hold, seemingly once again, just when we feel like it's within our fingertips, it just seems to slip away. But what can we do? Onwards, just a small matter of a trip to Manchester City to try and get back to winning ways. We'll see how that one goes. We've got a stellar panel today to unpick this Everton game. It's a shame it's not under better circumstances, but Fulhamish are actually celebrating our 800th ever episode today. I mean, wow, 800. It's sort of, crazy really. But we've got Jack and Loz with us today. Fulham have had some iconic duos over the years. I'm thinking of Best and Marsh, Hangland and Hughes, Roy and Ray, but I definitely think Jack and Loz are up on that pantheon. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you both? Start with you, Loz. Good to have you back on.
Really, really good. Thank you. Despite the match on Saturday, very, very happy and delighted to be here on the 800th. I can't believe you've had 800 therapy sessions and, goodwill sessions and it's great to be part of it. So thank you for having us.
Oh, it's our pleasure. I would say of those 800, at least 700 have been therapy sessions. I'd say there's probably 100 spattered in there, which were cause of celebrations, but I think the lion's share would fall into the former category. Jacqui, how are you doing? It's been a little while since we've had you both on, but it's great to have you. How did you commiserate after the game on Saturday?
Well, we absolutely love normally if we win or we draw, we normally go to the Riverside. It's got such a good atmosphere in there after a winning game. You get, a player coming in, Ivan does the little chat with them and it's great. But on Saturday, we were just like, we cannot go in there with everybody being really fed up. So we went to the Riverside Studios. It was quiet. Everyone else in there was there to watch The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Good for them. So we had a few drinks in there, which helped a lot.
Yeah, nothing like grabbing a drink after a disappointing defeat. A little birdie tells us it was also your birthday on Saturday, Jacqui. I can only apologise on behalf of the team for doing their best to put some dampeners on the celebrations. But did you have a nice birthday regardless, despite Fulham's best efforts?
Just about. But yeah, I'm waiting for that apology from the team, actually, rather than you on their behalf. But I'm not thinking it's going to be forthcoming. If they'd like to make it up to me by doing well in Manchester, then I'd just about accept that as an apology.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a fair deal. We're also joined by our one and only AF. You good, mate? How are you feeling after that disappointing result on Saturday?
You mentioned therapy sessions. I feel like I need one. I think I'm one mention of the B word, Brentford, away from a nervous breakdown myself. So, yeah, the more therapy that we can get into the next 45 to 60 minutes is ideal for my mental health more than anything.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry that I've asked you to do the 3-word reviews because they can often be a place where people vent their frustrations rather than anything else. But were there any good ones? Any ones that raised a smile? What were your favourites?
Let's delve in. I guess this is the reason that people use Twitter, isn't it? You've got the bad sides of it, and let's start with the positivity, shall we? Brendan McGowan with annual drop-off begins. Nothing like a bit of positivity to kick things off. James Wilson, by the way, James, can you tell that your brother Harry that he was rubbish? Said, drawn, then quartered. One of the best usernames I've ever seen on Instagram. Humunga Dunga with paid our dues, like Dewsbury Hall. And Christopher Fonnersbeck with softest toffee. But to break from tradition, because it's our 800th episode, I'm going to announce the name of the podcast early with full marks, and it is absolutely full marks with a 3-word review with sticky toffee fumble. It's incredible.
Yeah, I thought, what is it about this Everton side? Loz, do you get that sense of foreboding whenever we face Everton? Because it always seems to come at a time. I remember looking back at this fixture last year, there was a sense of optimism, come on, let's bag 3 points, get us a little bit closer to Europe, and then they just seem to have our number.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, I remember last season, just that feeling that you got before the match, thinking, right, we just need to have a win here. Everton weren't doing well at the time, and it's going to really get us that sort of like push for Europe. And then, lo and behold, we were absolutely rubbish. They weren't even in form, and then they beat us 3-1, I think. And it was, just a sort of nightmare performance. And then this time, I think I heard Elizabeth say last week that Moyes always has our number, or Marco's number. And he does. He does. But they were on identical points, played the same number of games. We were only just ahead of them on goals scored. So it was always going to be a battle. But, we'll go into it. But the nature of the battle, it was just the weirdest, most Fulhamish match, because it was just chalk and cheese. It was just, I don't think I've ever seen a match that we've performed like that at the Cottage. And I do think it's Everton, but I think it's Moyes that has Marco's number. And my take on it is, I think it's actually down to Marco mostly this match. We'll come on to individual performances, but he was outfoxed by a wily, experienced coach, I think.
No, I think that's pretty much spot on, Loz. And Jacqui, to use the old footballing cliche of game of two halves, we were electric first half. I thought our attacking was fluid. Everyone was clicking. We'd set up perfectly against this very sort of physical Everton side. And Pickford was making some absolutely blinding saves, and just the drop off. It seemed like the team talks were very, obviously Everton got the better, I would say, and I just think it was the way in which we left our substitutions so late allowed Everton to grow in confidence, dominate the midfield more than they had done in the first half. But yeah, I mean, it was just I can't remember the last time I saw a first half where I was so confident that we were going to go on and win the game, and then for us to just completely, seemingly fall apart. I mean, what do you think was key to our kind of downfall in the second half?
I actually think our downfall may have started a bit in the first half without us realising, in that we missed some golden chances. The long range shots from Samu, from Emil, they look spectacular, but they slightly missed. Clearly, Harrison Reed has been giving them tips, but they haven't totally taken them on board yet. So that was disappointing. The Raul not passing to Harry mix up, that was disappointing. So I think we felt, we definitely edged the first half. The goal, although it was a scrappy goal, it was deserved. We would deserve to be in the lead. But we said, people around us were saying, wow, Everton are going to be much better in the second half. And I think all the fans realised that. But you sort of wonder in the dressing room, was everyone just sort of wrapped up in their duvet, drinking hot chocolate, and Marco's just sort of soothing them rather than, getting them hyped up again? Because, yeah, we realised they were going to be better, but Marco and the players didn't seem to realise that. So when they were all over us at the start of the second half, and then a bit further into the second half and a bit further into the second half, it was really strange. We were sort of backs to the wall defending, looked really disorganised, and no subs for ages and ages and ages. I think we were really missing Tom. I think if Tom had been fit and had been on the bench, I think he would have come on and it would have made a difference. But as it was, none of the subs really made an impact. And is anyone surprised by the result? No, I don't think they are.
Yeah, it was a half time. I think, as you highlighted there, Jacqui, that everyone was feeling like there was a big response from Everton in the post. And Ben Jarman, our dear friend who watches the games over from the west coast of Canada in Vancouver, messaged saying, I've just woken up. It's probably about 5 or 6 in the morning his time. Is this game worth switching on. And Sammy was just like, no, I'd go back to bed, mate. We're losing this one 3-0. And it was 2-1. Not 3-0, sorry, 3-1. And it was 2-1 in the end. But I mean, he just, everyone could kind of like feel it coming. AF, just to the point of, we had some really decent opportunities. A beautiful strike from Samu Chukwueze, which hit the bar. Also, Emil Smith-Rowe clattered the crossbar as well. And we looked like we were playing some very exciting football. But was it perhaps a case of like these chances sort of flattered to deceive a little bit? They were long-range efforts, albeit they hit the bar. But I feel like the only real clear-cut one that we should have scored that didn't go in, of course, was the Raul Jimenez Wilson opportunity. I mean, obviously, Jimenez had done incredibly well to get us ahead, albeit via a sort of own goal. But I feel like this moment, Wilson finds himself in an acre of space to the right-hand side of the goal. And I mean, really, a player of Jimenez's experience and quality should have just laid it up. And it would have been 2-0. And you kind of feel like if that goal had gone in, then it would have been very difficult for Everton to come back.
For sure. I think there's a few ways we can look at this. The chances that kind of led before that, it was some of the best football that Fulham have played all season at home, I'd say. We were really kind of carving them open. I would say that Sessegnon was looking kind of incredible. I was thinking to myself, right, this is exactly why he's starting at left back. I was seeing Iwobi driving forward. I was seeing Sander Berge. What we've seen from Berge before is that when he plays alongside Iwobi, he can even push forward a little bit more. And really, Everton were on not even the back foot. They were literally hanging on, albeit there weren't any kind of clear-cut opportunities. And that's why I think we had those overloads more outside the box to be able to actually, get those pot shots off that ended up being our chances. When it comes to Jimenez, right, he scores his goal. I would say, obviously it's an own goal, but it is his goal at the end of the day, and that's exactly what we want to see from him. But I wonder if the pressure of Muniz being on the bench got to him just a little bit. The fact that he's got somebody breathing down his neck and he's thinking, I might need 2 goals to keep myself in this starting 11. And when that chance comes through to him, he turns and takes something on the half turn that really he doesn't have to. He probably can realise if he puts in Wilson, it's a definite goal. We're comfortable in the game. But I also don't think he's done the wrong thing there because he's a striker in form for us who is looking for a goal. And we have so often criticised players for not taking their opportunities or not taking shots enough. And we've seen those games, a Fulham can make 12 passes in the box and no one takes a shot. We see both sides of it. But I think at the end of that first half, every Fulham fan was looking at this thinking we should be about 3-0 up.
Yeah.
And every game where we go in thinking we should be about 3-0 up always ends up that we're on the wrong side of it. I just think that on this occasion, I wouldn't even blame the first half on anybody specifically. It just didn't go our way. The second half is where we should have taken the ball by the horns and said, we were, rightly winning the game. Let's go and cement our place in this. And we didn't. We thought like we were going to walk the rest of the game. And anyone who's watched Premier League football this season realises that there is no easy games. So trying to expect to walk the second half 1-0 is naivety on the point of the players, or to everyone else's point, maybe Marco didn't get them geared up enough for what was going to come their way for the next 45.
Yeah, it's a really interesting take there, AF, about maybe the mental impact of having Muniz coming back to full fitness and Raul perhaps wanting to really cement his place in the team. I think that you could see the reaction of Raul when Muniz did come back on. He gave him, a massive, great big hug, and obviously had a wonderful reception from the crowd, as you'd expect. But maybe it was playing on his mind somewhat. And, if he hadn't have, because, one thing that we praise Raul for so much is his link-up play, his unselfishness. And it was a rare moment of perhaps him being a little bit selfish that caused him to snatch at the shot. Who knows? We kind of like skirted over the goal a little bit because we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves talking about what could have been. But Loz, I'd like to just touch upon the actual goal. As AF said, although it goes down as Mikolenko own goal, it was Raul's in my mind, and it was a beautiful flowing move. Started off by Emil Smith-Rowe. I think he deserves credit for his performance on Saturday. Aggressive, he's being direct, and as he said, he's really coming to his own in this starting 11. But it's the ball from Chukwueze that finds Iwobi for me, which is the real kind of bit of flair, which kind of made this goal. Obviously, it finds Cess, it scrambles in. It's all a bit messy after that, but it just sort of shows what this team is capable of when it is at its best.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Because, I mean, Raul, once again, he's in the right place. And whilst it's not attributed to him, it is his goal. I totally agree with AF. And I think Cesc had such a good game. He was our man of the match on Saturday. And I just want to go back to the sort of starting 11, because that was the one change, wasn't it? It was Cesc for Anthony. And we all love Anthony. We understand he's, been this really bad luck that he's been injured. He wants to go storm into the World Cup, a home World Cup. And he needs the minutes to be able to get back into sort of like match sharpness. And I did assume, like incorrectly, because I know nothing, like that Anthony would probably start and then come off after 60 minutes, and then it would be a Cesc Kevin sort of link-up play. But when I saw Cesc, I was not unhappy. I just felt sorry for Anthony, so it's a nice problem to have. And then, and as I said, I just want to go back to the starting 11, which was good. And there was no one that you would say they should be subbed at half time, because everyone was just playing really well. But it was the bench that we were all so energised by. And that's what I mean about a Fulhamish performance. It's the first time that everyone's back, bar Lukic and then Tom. And so that sort of made Marco not have a problem as to whether he actually had Tom on the bench or not. And so we had so much optimism going into the game. And the first half, I have, as Jacqui knows, a real soft spot for Ralph. So he's my favourite player. And so when I saw some people criticising him for selfishness and other people going, but he should be selfish, he's a striker, I'm like on that side of the argument. And he's there in the right place. Some people criticise him that he should have been following up, and obviously it sort of flailed into the goal by Mikalenko. But he still did what he was supposed to do. And on what I liked about it, it was a different type of goal. Now, I love that Harrison won the goal of January on Match of the Day. Fantastic, because it deserved it, and hopefully it will win goal of the season. And then Harry won in December. And so we've got these amazing sort of bangers that go in. And if one of those had gone in on Saturday, like, they could have been up there. And already Kevin, having scored on the 1st of February, I think he could still be a February contender, which would be amazing if we get these Fulham players getting sort of like goals of the month and then even goal of the season at the end of the season. So the link-up play was so good. There was no one that did anything wrong. And I think, they say that Moyes' team on the road, they're happy to sit back, happy to sort of like have minimal possession, be got at because they're so strong defensively. But because we could have been 3-0 up and should have been 3-0 up, then he knew that he couldn't stick with that plan for the second half, because that normal plan where he could absorb possession, let the other side have the ball and then just counter, he knew that he couldn't do it because the risk was too great. So they came out all guns blazing. But the first half, there was no one that we were sort of pushing for a sub to be made at half time. But obviously the second half was a completely different story.
Yeah, no, for sure. I hear you. And like, I too am a Raul Jimenez evangelist, Loz. I think he brings so much to this squad, both on and off the pitch. And although, yes, I think it's got to go down as a bit of an error not squaring it to Wilson, who was in a good opportunity. You can't begrudge a striker, an out-and-out striker, for not trying to take it on the swivel. But yeah, it wasn't to be, of course. Jacqui, were you surprised at all with the Cesc in for Jedi move? I think Cesc played really well. It was one of our best performers, if not our man of the match. Along with Smith Rowe, who I mentioned earlier, of course. But yeah, I think it was just the case of Jedi had obviously struggled a little bit since coming back from injury, and maybe it was just a time to give Cesc a run out and allow Jedi to recover a little bit more and just get back to kind of match fitness on the training ground before being introduced as sort of abruptly as he was, maybe.
Yeah, I think the thing with Jedi, and we all know this and we've all said it over the years, he's a fantastic athlete, but where he is perhaps not quite as good as some left backs, he's not the most skillful. So when he's out being injured, he's had this long layoff, he's got his fitness back because that's his main attribute and that's clearly what he's been working on. And so he comes straight back in. He's running up and down at 100 miles an hour like he hasn't been out for a few months. But What he didn't get back, and still hasn't got back as far as we've seen, is the sharpness, the skill, the intricacy, maybe it just even the anticipation, the intelligence. And Sess in the background, and obviously we all love Sess, he's been working away. He's been looking really good. And maybe we were a little bit surprised to see him in the lineup on Saturday, but surprised in a good way because he deserved it. And I think part of the reason why he was our man of the match is that now we are pretty much back to a full lineup. Everyone's competing with everyone else. You've said that about Raul Muniz. Marco's got big decisions to make. But Sess was the one who, if you look at people who are competing for positions, he's the one who did himself justice. He's the one that you'd look at and think, well, Anthony's got to stay out because Sess was so good. So Sess is doing himself a lot of favours, I think.
Yeah, no, it'd be he put in a really good case to cement that position, at least for the time being. So said second half, obviously not the most positive outcome for Fulham, but there were positives to be had. Obviously, we welcome back Rodrigo Muniz, AF, who was substituted on for Raul in the 75th minute. What happened immediately after the substitution obviously wasn't ideal, but whilst it was amazing to see Muniz come back, and obviously it's been a long journey for him with his injury, 91 days away on the sidelines, lovely reception from Fulham. I just wonder whether it was perhaps a little bit too soon, given how finally the game was in the balance. And I don't think Rodrigo played badly. Obviously his first touch was an attempted overhead kick, incredibly on brand from the man, but I just wonder whether that was the substitution that we needed at that moment in time. You know, obviously Kevin came on for Chukwueze as well, but I felt like the midfield battle, I felt like Berger was getting smothered a little bit, and obviously if we would have had someone like TC to come on, it would have been better. Lukic is out, but I just wonder whether it was just a little bit too soon bringing Muniz back in that circumstance.
I think that Muniz coming back was more necessary than it was required. Like, we've seen Raul putting himself through hell and high water to try and keep, a striker on the pitch, and we know he's not going to use Jonah Kusiasare too much, but when it comes to it, he will put his body through horrendous things for Fulham, and that's a great thing. But if we want him playing on Wednesday, we want him playing beyond that. We don't want to go back to a situation where we just have one striker. I think he was probably told by the medical team, look, Muniz can do 15 minutes or 20 minutes. We need to bring him on, and it's more a preservation move than it is actually going to improve us in that game. I think it was unfortunate at the time that he came on when we were already kind of changing wingers, and I already noticed like people were switching positions all over the place. It's not going to help in creating chances. What we did need, we all know, was a TC in there. But I actually think there's a bit of a left field move that we could have made here, and people are going to criticise me for this as well because it's crazy. But Sessegnon is so good for Fulham that I genuinely wonder if he could have played a role in midfield, to the point that we could have brought Jedi on, and that might have actually given a bit more balance to our attacking play than actually just switching everything just up front. But yeah, bringing on Muniz totally makes sense to me, just from a preservation of Raul. And was he brilliant? No. Has Kusiasare been brilliant when he's come on? No. I think the only way that Muniz is going to get back up to speed as well is going to be those minutes. We're going to see a few gangly touches here and there for 15 minutes in games until we see him starting. I actually think that the Stoke game is going to be brilliant for Muniz because he'll get some serious minutes under his belt. The cup games have always kind of helped him come back into the side, and then we can hopefully start to see him as our starting nine towards the end of the season. But I wouldn't expect too much of him within the next few months. We're already told it would be kind of March before we see Muniz properly back. The fact that he's back by start of February is actually probably a little bit ahead of schedule. But the substitutions were frustrating because we've always said how great the bench was. And I totally agree on that. When you look at the bench and you're thinking, oh, that's amazing. But how those substitutions come together is the bit where Marco comes in. It's not just throw them all on. It's planning. It's saying at 65 minutes, we all knew that Everton were probably going to find a way back into this game. How could we plan for that rather than kind of reacting or, as it happened, making two changes a little bit too late on, conceding a goal straight away, and then wondering how we get back into the game? It's going to be a difficult one for Marco to work out how he uses that attacking talent off the bench effectively, rather than just waiting to the last minute and throwing it all on.
Yeah, I mean, Dan wrote in his player ratings that the combination of Muniz and Oscar Bob were the two worst impact subs of all time. Not having any sort of slight on their performances, just the fact that we brought on Muniz immediately, Dewsbury Hall scores. We bring on Bob immediately, Leno own goal. It was just unfortunate timing, but just to that point, it felt like a case of too little, too late. The tide had already turned in the game by the time that we were thinking about these substitutions, Loz, and I just think it was, just a little bit too late from Marco. Those substitutions should have been made earlier. Let's talk about the Everton equaliser. Good finish from Dewsbury Hall. I mean, it's just so frustrating, is that the amount of times we've said on Fulhamish, like, why didn't we just sign him when we were linked with him? I know it's not obviously that simple, but a player like him, he was absolutely instrumental in these 3 points for Everton. Got the goal, obviously put the cross in, which we'll come on to. The corner, that led to the winner. But for me, this guy, I think Catania gets beaten too easily, personally. But yeah, it just felt like it was coming, didn't it?
Yeah, no, I mean, he's a great player, and, they say he's going to be a very good stand-in for Grealish. He's, he's obviously very talented, and he sort of, certainly did one on us on Saturday. I just want to go back to AS point. I love the preservation of Raul. It's like he's an ancient monument. Like, I think I'm going to have that somewhere emblazoned. I want the preservation of Raul, because I think that's definitely a worthy ambition, I think. But everyone in the crowd, and this is why all the fans are behind Marco, and he is a flawed genius. Can I just say that? Because what genius doesn't make some mistakes? Because and totally agree that the bench was great and impressive, but without any real midfield game changers. Like, maybe that's a hindsight thing, but it definitely ended up being the case. And Lukic was out for injury. I mean, he was actually playing when we played them at the Hill Dickinson, and so that obviously didn't work that well. So you can't just say that he would have been the magic formula to undo it all. But it was the midfield that we were getting overrun, because there was huge defensive frailties, but we just couldn't get the ball out, and then we were just squaring at the back, and it was back and forth to Leno, and then so there wasn't. I think we had struggled with the physicality. We struggled with just the whole sort of ebb and flow of the match. And TC wasn't there, but he would have been the guy that would come on and control the match, because we were on the ropes for so long. And actually, when they scored, I said to Jacqui, I'm sort of relieved, because that was coming. And actually, now they've scored, it's sort of like, good, it's happened. Now it will actually shake them up, and we'll actually do something. But it didn't work. And if you actually look at the match report and the timing of the subs, it's our sub 75, their goal 75. It's so, I've never seen that before. And then our sub 83, our sub's 83, and then their goal 83. It's not even the next minute. It's down as the same minute. And of all the subs to bring on, well, one, they were very, very late. And two, they were just ineffective. So I think, but who did we have to bring on in that midfield combo? There was Harrison Reed. I mean, is he the answer? Not usually. So, I mean, it's easy to sort of say after the event, the sub should have been different, but it definitely needed something changing, and maybe assess Kevin Combo earlier. But, we're talking about the 60 minutes. It wasn't working pretty much. It felt like Everton had all the possession practically in the second half. And then when we did get the ball, we'd lose it. We were just sloppy and just ineffective. So, but yeah, good goal from Dewsbury Hall, but it was always coming. It was just, and then, as I said, I was quite relieved it happened, just so that we could actually then react to it, and we didn't.
Yeah, unfortunately, we doubled down and let Everton get further back into the game. Let's come on to the goal. I mean, Loz, to your point, it didn't look like after we conceded that we were getting back into it in any way. There wasn't that same, we didn't wrestle back momentum. It just still felt like one-way traffic from Everton. And the goal was really hard to take, I think, Jacqui. It was poor from Leno. Obviously, the ball comes in. James O'Brien was kind of in front of Leno, and Leno's trying to sort of scramble around him. And it's the sort of one that you look back on the replay to see whether there's any kind of clambering or anything that could potentially get looked at. And he's just standing his grounds. I think for me, Leno, I absolutely love Bernd Leno, but it was poor from him. And I think there have been some concerns about his ability to claim from crosses, from corners, and it starting to look like it's a bit of a weak link for us in our defence. But yeah, I just wanted to hear your take on it, and I think unfortunately it's got to go down as a rare mistake from our keeper.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that certainly up until the beginning of this season, Leno was kind of untouchable. He was talked about up there with Mark Schwarzer, really, in terms of being one of our great goalies. Maybe not quite Van der Sar, but certainly, up there. Kept clean sheets, really strong presence at the back, good distribution, good shot stopping, good at most things. And then this season, and whether it's an age thing, a coaching thing, or whatever it is, he does seem to have just dropped off a bit. And then Saturday seemed to be a good example of that. We were thinking even in the first half that he was looking a bit flaky. Some of his distribution was not great. Things were a bit slow. So he had an off day without a shadow of a doubt. The actual goal, which I have to say was very difficult to see from the Hammersmith end, and which we naturally have not wanted to watch too many times again. You can't really just blame him. It was a really well taken corner, as you said. Dewsbury Hall's very good at that kind of thing. And we're not that good at that kind of thing. You do feel that when a good opponent gets a corner against us, or any kind of set piece against us, that things swing in their favour, and it's a bit hit and miss as to whether we're going to manage to deal with it properly. Not helped, as we've all just said. And I thought that one of the 101 points of management was don't make a change when you're defending a corner. But our somewhat flawed genius obviously does know better. But on this occasion, it was an odd decision. And, poor Oscar, who, everyone's so pleased to see, and we can't wait to see what he can do in good circumstances. When he was warming up, we thought, oh, he's quite slight, but he's standing next to Calvin Bassey, that's why. And then he came on and he actually is quite slight. And throwing him into defending a corner as his first action for Fulham against such a physical team actually feels a bit unfair. So he, as you said earlier, as an impact sub, he didn't really make an impact. And as a corner to defend, we, as a team, we just didn't do it well. So I don't entirely blame Leno, but I do think some criticism of Leno is justified.
Yeah, I definitely hear you. And it was quite a harsh introduction for poor old Oscar Bob, defending a corner against the most physically intimidating team in the Premier League by some distance. I always forget how enormous they are. You're looking at they've got the amount of players that they've got who are like 6'4" plus is absurd. But yeah, it was a tough one. AF, I just wanted to touch upon our defence as a whole, because obviously, we can say it wasn't the best from Leno from the corner, but I think Castagna didn't have a great game. I don't think Anderson covered himself in glory either. I mean, I think it's way too soft for the first goal to allow McLennan to get past like that. Is just, he made him look like he was, prime Doku or something, and he clearly is not the case. But how did you feel about our defensive performance as a whole? Because I think it was concerning, especially if you're thinking about it of the wider context of, we're hoping to press on to Europe potentially, and also bringing Tete on so late as well. It was clear that Castagna was having all sorts of issues, was playing poorly, was up against it. Put him out of his misery, take him off, bring on Tete. If he's on the bench and he's fit enough, why was that call made so late?
Yeah, the horse had already bolted there, hadn't it?
Yeah.
We had all seen Castagna, actually, to be honest, I think when he's in a fairly settled defence, looks fine. I think as soon as the defence starts to look wobbly, he starts to look really, really wobbly. So what I actually think could change our defence going forwards is that, we start with Kenny Tete. I don't think that's really an argument. He kind of protects our whole team, because if you look at our right-hand side with Wilson, Harry Wilson, for his brilliances, he has the flaws of maybe not being the strongest at tracking back either. I think he tries his best, but he gives away an awful lot of free kicks as well. When he is backed up from Castagna, sometimes Castagna ends up like pushing weirdly in field. That then brings Anderson out wide. Oh, you don't want to see that man out wide because he can't run back either. So it's basically all of our flaws kind of start from the same place on that right-hand side, and that's why I think it's a little bit more exposed. Bringing Kenny Tete in brings kind of that balance back. Like, I don't see Kenny Tete beaten very many times at a 1v1, which means that Anderson is dragged out less, which means that his left side central defender looks slightly better as well, because there's a more solid unit there. It doesn't really help us hugely from corners. I think he's like, Tete is probably mildly better at heading the ball away and mildly more physical than Castagna on that front. But our corners have got worse over the course of the season. And without taking my tinfoil hat and putting it on, I believe Stuart Gray's departed the club around that time. There is something that I've noticed when Stuart Gray's departed the club previously, that we get kind of instantly worse at set-piece defending. But when he comes back, which has happened before, suddenly we can defend set pieces. Now, whether that's because he's maybe in charge of that, I can't guess at that. But I can certainly say that we can't, as a team, look at Bernd Leno every time and say, oh, he's not coming for this. James O'Brien was on pitch for 90 minutes and I didn't know what he was there for until that corner came in. But everyone else could work out that he was there just to block Bernd Leno. You have to, as one of our biggest and most physical players, go and just deal with the problem, not the ball. Deal with the problem, which is the fact that your goalkeeper can't get anywhere close to it. I actually saw Swartz, who was talking about, I think it was on 5 Live a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying the number one thing that annoyed him was where, someone blocked off him as a goalkeeper, and he always put his kind of defenders in front of him in charge of just going and getting that man out of the way, because it's not your job as a goalkeeper to say, I have to fight all these players. Your job is to go and get the ball, save the ball. And I actually just don't think that we're doing enough to protect Bernd Leno when we know that that's not his strong point. Everyone has to make up for where other players' strengths don't lie. In the same way that I was talking, Tete covering for Anderson because he doesn't have a great deal of pace. Maybe that's where it will help. We need more of a balance in the team to help everybody out rather than individuals falling down and getting not enough support, really.
No, I think that's all totally fair. And you saw from the goal, he was completely smothered and not able to get his usual sort of leap. And yeah, perhaps it is our defenders' sort of duty to make the path a bit clearer for him, which will allow him to, of course, collect. It was obviously a tough result to take. But I just want to talk on obviously the wider context, and I think why we're all so disappointed is the fact that it does seem to take a bit of a knock for our Europe charge down a bit. Loz, do you still feel like the Sammy wrote in his weekend roundup that he feels like that's kind of that now, as it was last year? You're like, okay, oh well, that was a nice idea, but the grim reality is that it's probably not going to happen. Do you share the same opinion, or do you still have faith that we can rally and mount this charge?
Well, as a football fan, you always have to have some faith. We all know what they say about hope. And that was the problem with the first half. It was just, before we'd even kicked off, we were playing at home. It was a 6-pointer. We didn't want Everton to do the double. We had everyone almost back from injury. We had a blinder of a first half where we should have been up, several goals. And then there was just complete capitulation in the second half. We were just on the ropes for pretty much the whole time. And you sort of think, how can you do this to us, Fulham? How can you be so good and then so shit? It's just so annoying. And then, and it was an important match. We got City in the week. And you just, so it was just so disappointing. And going back to, I think Castagna was having a hard time. So going back to early subs, you would have taken him off earlier and it wouldn't have been a sort of a bad thing to do. Castagna has done a really good job of stepping in for Tete, and everyone seems to be doing pile-ons for him, which I think is unfair. He's been a consummate professional, maybe the slightly weaker link of some players, but still had done a job, and he's done a good job. But on Saturday, it wasn't his day. So, and I don't know if it's just that Tete's just not there yet. So he was really limiting his minutes to just a few, just to get him back. I mean, I don't know, but that was a sort of fairly obvious one. And even with Everton being such a sort of like a physical, big side, we probably would have thought that Bassi might have been in here. And then when Cuenca was on a yellow, it wouldn't have been that wilder thing to swap Cuenca for Bassi, and not just before a corner, because we know that wouldn't have worked. But and so it was just the sort of the nature of it was just so disappointing. And we could still, we could still go on a good run. We've got everyone back, but it does show that there is a sort of a lightness in midfield. I think we need Lukic and TC to give the full complement, but then picking the bench is going to be tough for Marco, which he says is always his hardest part of his job. So, we've still got winnable games coming up. You have to assume that with the quality and depth of the squad now that we can still do well. Apparently, I don't think we've kept a clean sheet since last December when we played West Ham away. So we're not good at keeping clean sheets. We're not good at defending set pieces, but then Everton are good at scoring from set pieces, as are a number of teams in the Premier League. So we've got to make that part of our armour. We've got to be better. I think Leno did, not perform, particularly greatly at all. But I do think it's on the defence to help him out. I totally agree with that. I just think someone come in and intervene. He's just being man-marked right within a millimetre of his life. So I just think we just need to, as you say, play as a team. I think we can come back. It would be interesting, and typically Fulhamish, for them to put in a good performance at Man City and even get a draw or something. I'm not going wildly more optimistic than that, but so who knows? We've got the ingredients to do well.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I genuinely do believe that that's what we're going to see this week, midweek. Obviously, we had the classic at the Cottage, the 5-4. And yes, our record against Manchester City, as most teams in the league will say, isn't the best, especially at the Etihad. But I feel like we genuinely are due a performance against this side. I hope that the squad will want to bounce back and really put in a good showing. And we do, as we've seen, rise to the occasions against the sort of top six sides. We take the game to them, and yeah, it would be incredibly Fulhamish to go to the Etihad after Saturday and get a result. But I'm feeling madly quite confident that we'll see at least a response. Whether that will translate into any points, I don't know. But I feel like a performance is coming. We've got all the constituent parts, players coming back from injury. It's just, I feel like we could see it click to some quite impressive. Yeah, we can see it click, hopefully. We've got some questions here from listeners that I would like to touch upon. I'll throw this one to you, Jacqui. So Jim on X asks, do we overreact after a shit performance, or is it just the hope that kills us? There's 2 points to this question. So that's the first point. For what it's worth, I think we're all guilty of catastrophizing and getting ahead of ourselves after what is essentially a bad day at the office. So yeah, I feel like the answer to that from my perspective is yes, and there's still a lot of excitement to come this season, and I still think that we can charge for Europe for what it's worth. And then the second point of his questions are we at the point where the squad is too good, at least up front, to keep players happy, or indeed get a consistent playing style? Now, I think essentially is the overall depth of our squad in attacking too strong in that players aren't happy because they're not getting consistent game time. There's too much competition, perhaps. There's too many options to get a uniform style. What do you make of these questions, Jacqui?
So on the first question, yeah, I agree. The overreaction on X, especially after a match, is quite alarming. I mean, we usually sit in the pub and kind of read some tweets out to each other. But you've got different factions, I think, when the chips are down. You've got the everything's the Khan's fault faction. You've got the Marco's taken us as far as he can faction. You've got the lack of leadership on the pitch faction. And then on Saturday, you had a new It's All Leno's Fault faction, which was then a bit of a counterbalance for no, actually, it's all the defence's fault faction. And so you have a few hours after the game, and maybe this is what social media it's good for, rather than people getting drunk and nasty. They just take it out on their keyboard. But yeah, you have a few hours after the game where there is this overreaction, and by Sunday morning, everyone's calmed down a bit and said, just like we're saying now, wow, we could have a reaction at City. Lots of games left, lots of positives to take, and I think that's the nature of Fulham fans. And probably football fans generally, but certainly Fulham fans, there does seem to be this social media overreaction. I think on the other question, that's a really good one. I do think it is interesting that we keep signing these really good wingers and no one else. So you can't really just have a squad of very good wingers. You need some other people at some stage to come in. And I wouldn't say there's too much competition. I think competition can only be a good thing. But I do think that for some reason, Marco is better in adversity. Give him a small squad, give him a game against a top six side, give him this sort of backs to the wall underdog situation, and he brings out the best in the team. It's almost as if this kind of embarrassment of riches of these brilliant players, he's just not quite so good at handling, maybe. And, that could be a problem going forward when you've got Oscar and Kevin, and assuming Sammy signs permanently, and goodness knows what's happening with Harry. So in some ways it's a nice problem to have, but it is a potential pitfall, I think.
Maybe, I was just going to say, maybe that will put the big clubs off wanting him. That could be the silver lining, so to speak.
It is an interesting point, though, isn't it? Because it's like, you think logically it'd be a very good problem to have, like we're sport for choice. We've got so many different options and coming off the bench. But then, it can cause you perhaps some squad harmony issues. It's always a balance, really. I think that one thing on that point, though, is Marco, I think part of his genius is the fact that he has installed this amazing atmosphere within the squad. We only need to look at how they act together in the little sort of snippets that we get into sort of training sessions and on the players' social media accounts. It seems like they all really are playing for each other. They all have these great relationships. And I never ever look at this Fulham squad and think, there could potentially be sort of like a bit of unrest and players that aren't happy there. It seems like that is one of his main strengths. Interesting, we've got a question which is similar to this, but although slightly different. I'm going to shout this one to you, AF. So Will Curry on Instagram says, are we still yet to work out our best 11? Just my quick take on this is that I think one of Marco's main strengths is his ability to, first of all, the signings that we have. I think versatility is a big hallmark of a Marco Silva signing. And the fact that we do have so many different options, I think that we're not a club that has its best 11. We never have been. We haven't been for the entire time that Marco's been at the wheel. So I do wonder whether Fulham ever will have a best 11, because it seems that Marco obviously picks the starting 11, which suits our opposition. But I just wanted to hear what you thought about this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in the fact that we don't have a best 11. I think some of the, maybe I'll call them older style managers, had that in Roy Hodgson. You would know who was getting picked every single week. Okay, that served a purpose, and it was really good when you were a heavily drilled team. I think for the kind of flawed genius point of Marco Silva makes sense, because you cannot be a genius and never change anything. He's going to consistently make mistakes, but to do that, he has to work out what combinations work in real match scenarios, and you can't do that without changing things either. So I think to work out your best 11, I don't think is where we're going to get to, but working out best combinations, I know that he's getting to. It took him some time to maybe be like, okay, we were all absolutely sold on the idea that Sander Berge and Iwobi was going to absolutely light our season on fire. And in some games, it absolutely can. But we also saw against Everton the second half hour, in some games it really doesn't. So working out in which scenarios his players fit best is, I think, where Marco's got a little bit of work to do with the squad. But having the abundance of riches that we've got out wide with Oscar Bob and others. I think actually Silva will see them in other positions, and there could be a position where we play, 4 behind a main striker for a point in a game, but he has to work out and be given time how that can be most effective. At the minute, he hasn't got there, but I also don't think that you never complete the game in the same way that Pep hasn't completed the game with Man City. He's got every single player at his disposal that he ever wants. Sometimes it works off and sometimes it doesn't. And I really hope that given the time and hopefully signing a contract, we're building a squad that we can start to find those combinations at the right times in games more often than we don't find them.
Yeah, no, I hear you for sure. We got a question here that's quite interesting, I felt, from somebody who goes by the name of Polish Pudding on Instagram. Loz, I throw this one to you, but I'm just quite interested to hear all of your thoughts on this one. She asked, was the atmosphere really bad on Saturday? I usually sit in the Johnny Haynes and I was quite shocked by how quiet it felt. It's not the first time and it won't be the last that we talk about the atmosphere at Craven Cottage. For what it's worth, I didn't think it was too bad. It didn't strike me as a game where I felt, sometimes you get like matches, especially sort of like halfway through the season where you're like, okay, yeah, no, it is very quiet here. And Fulham, of course, aren't necessarily a club who's known for its like vociferous home atmosphere. But I just wonder whether we're at that stage in the season where, we're just over the halfway point. The games are becoming increasingly important in terms of our overall goal of achieving Europe, but it's not still quite at that point where we're at the this is a must-win stage, and therefore maybe that means that it kind of isn't as electric as it quite possibly can be. But I didn't think it was too bad, but I was just interested to hear your thoughts.
I didn't sort of note it as being a particularly sort of flat match. I mean, the weather was pretty rubbish, so you're not exactly sort of buoyed with great spirits if it's a sort of drizzly February day. But I think people were on their feet for the first half with those shots because they were sort of gasps from the crowd when Emil hit and rattled the crossbar and Samu, a couple of amazing shots. And Pickford had a really good match, and that, the difference with a really good goalkeeper and Leno not having his best game. He's a great goalie, but he's not Germany's number one. But Pickford was very good. So I thought the crowd were definitely up for it, and particularly just sort of seeing the subs warming up. Everyone was having Muniz back. Everyone loves seeing Muniz. I mean, everyone loves him. He was just smiling away from the minute he was sort of good to face the crowd, and everyone singing his song. And I think that it's just that the second half obviously put a dampener on everything because it was just from the off, we were on the ropes. And so, it's hard to get motivated. Everyone was yelling whenever they'd come forward, whenever there was a sort of a hint at any sort of attack. So I don't think it's a thing. I mean, the Riverside Stand, we know about the Riverside Stand. Yes, it's full of tourists, but at least it's full of people. Most of them are wearing black and white scarves. There was a time when we didn't have the stand, and then it was difficult in the stadium. Not only was it really cold on a February day with the wind howling in off the Thames, but so you've got a full stand, most of them wearing black and white scarves, screaming to support Fulham. So no, I wouldn't say it was one of the worst ones. And everyone knows the evening matches under the lights have more atmosphere in general anyway. So, I didn't think it was bad.
Yeah, more time in the pub. That's right. With Muniz coming back as well, that felt like a very special moment. And I just want a quick point on that. I think he looks strong, like really strong. He's obviously been out for a long time, spending a lot of time, I imagine, in the gym, working on his upper body. And obviously we've seen through the kind of like the montages that he's been posting of himself. But it reminded me of after Bobby Zamora came back from breaking his leg, and he just looked like built basically, an absolute unit. And I mean, hopefully it can make him even more of a nuisance to those centre backs. But I just wanted to touch on that. I thought Muniz looked, obviously not enough game time to really see. He's going to take him a little bit of time to come back to match fitness, but I thought he looked very strong. And also just I noticed as well, Emil Smith-Rowe I think looks as fit as he has done. Obviously, we're speaking about his performances, but he's really, when he first joined, he seemed quite sort of not like chunky as in overweight, but like quite top heavy. And I just think he's like really kind of he's looking athletic, and I think that's translating to his game as well. So yeah, whatever they're doing in training in terms of like the gym work, I think it's sort of starting to pay off.
He's got to be careful he doesn't end up too built, because if he does, then before we know it, people will be asking for him to be played in the number 8 position. And I don't think it's that far off. Like he's finally actually able to not only harass, the other team and actually do some pressing, but I've seen him win a few tackles. I've seen as well, he's not quite as light in the fact that sometimes I would see the ball kind of taken off him. He would just kind of stop and be like, oh, that wasn't my day. And he's really down on himself. So I think he's strong physically, but I think mentally he's probably taken a step up this season. Seeing what Josh King did when he started off the season, I think Smith Rowe's really kind of taken the ball by the horns in the last few games at least and said, I can be the man in this team to play, the number 10. But I hope that he doesn't feel too much pressure from that when, games like yesterday don't go our way. Sometimes I feel like he was one of the only players trying to win it. It kind of felt like that to me. And I hope he doesn't take it all on his shoulders, but testament to the team spirit we've got for him to drop out of the team, come back in. I hope that's the same for some of those that are getting injured or dropping out the team. They always know that there's a place for them when they do come back, rather than feeling like they're ostracized from the rest of the team, which we can see happen in some bigger club scenarios, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. He's added an aggression and a tenacity to his game this season that I think was maybe lacking a little bit last season. But I think he's been really, he was instrumental in our goal, right? He was the one who was driving the ball forward. Eventually, I think got fouled. Fell to Chukwueze, he put the ball into Iwobi. Like everything, it feels like is coming through him. So yeah, definitely deserves the flowers, I would say. We've got a question here from our very own JWP. I'll chuck this one to you, Jacqui. So he asks, with Chukwueze, Kevin, Bob and Raul all given licence to roam, has Fulham's attacking identity become a bit unclear? What do you reckon?
That's a really interesting question. I think it ties in with the fact that this season we have got in all these new attackers, and that Marco is still working out which is the best combinations. I mean, the Kevin Cess show a couple of weeks ago was like, just blew everyone's mind. Who would have thought the two of them would combine so well? And then, we try other things with the Samu and Cess show, which isn't bad. So I wouldn't say it's not that the identity's been lost. I think it's that it is just the fact that the new, perhaps improved, enhanced identity hasn't quite surfaced yet. And there's work to be done. And I think, again, we come back to the fact that the intention this season wasn't that Raul would have to put his body on the line for 90 minutes every week. It was the fact that the focal point of the attack was meant to be Muniz, which then makes more sense when you've got these wingers putting in crosses for a big target man to deal with. So I think, and I think it's been a good thing that things have been so fluid in a lot of ways, partly because if we don't know what to expect, opposition managers don't know what to expect either. But I do hope that with Muniz coming back, with Oscar getting up to speed, we are going to see some really exciting attacking stuff for the rest of the season.
No, for sure. It's definitely coming. You wait. It's clicking this week at the Etihad.
This Wednesday.
Let me tell you, Oscar Bob against his old side. It's written. It's written. On that note, I think it's about time we wrap up. It's been an absolute pleasure having you guys on for our 800th episode. I still can't quite believe that. And of course, Fulham turns 10 this year, which is Fulhamish, turns 10 this year. A whole decade of this nonsense. But yeah, thank you so much, obviously, to everyone who's listened, especially those who've been with us since the start. But yeah, what a milestone, and hats off to everyone involved. AF. Before we leave, I know you sort of said you broke rank and you named the pods from the off. Can you just remind us what the title was going to be?
I mean, as much as I'd like to switch now and just call it Preservation of Raul, I'm going to go with Sticky Toffee Fumble from Full Marks.
There we go, Sticky Toffee Fumble. Very good. Thank you very much, Jacqui.
Thank you very much, and congratulations again on the 800th episode. Phenomenal achievement, and the pod just gets better all the time.
Yeah, no, it's very kind. And thank you very much, Loz.
Well, thank you. I just want to echo what Jacqui said. It's brilliant what you do, and not just this, but just the preview I really like, and obviously this will catch on. Everything that you do is fantastic. So keep up the good work, because it is, whether you win or lose, you've got to have that therapy.
Yeah, it does help. It does help. And for those who aren't familiar with Jacqui and Loz, I think there's a very few in the Fulham fan base who aren't. But head over to their blog. It's amazing. It's really good. We'll put a link in the description to the show notes. But following every game, there's a little very beautiful, very lighthearted, comedic sort of rundown of the matchday experience and what it is to be a Fulham fan. Have you guys got any novels in the pipeline at the minute? You've also obviously written books and all sorts. Is there anything that you'd like to mention? Anything we can look forward to?
Yeah, we've got our third part of the trilogy coming out soon. Loz will tell you a bit more about the story.
So we're because we're slightly mad. We've written these novels about a fictional Fulham team in amongst sort of London politics and other stuff. And we have this rival club called the Diamond Blues. Guess who they are? So the first one was Crossing the Line. Second one was Caught in Possession. And this one is Paying the Penalty. And it's the final account of Fulham having just come up from the Championship in the second part of the season. And the owner's wife has taken over running the club. And she's found out there's all these massive financial holes in the account. And she's having to get an investor in. And it's this whole sort of like winding journey as to what's going to happen to the club and whether there's sort of investors that are going to be for the good or for the bad. And there might be the odd body floating in the Thames as well.
Ooh, so it's
and plenty of football action as well, because at the end of the day, it's a football fiction book.
It is.
Sounds great.
There's not many of those about for some reason.
Well, it sounds amazing. So I mean, I guess it's all the when can we expect that, the third instalment of the trilogy? Do you have a publication date?
Hopefully just before the World Cup. That's what we're aiming for, because there are a few American links as well. So we're hoping that ties in nicely.
We have a Texan striker called Zach Miller. That's all we need to know.
Is there any player in particular that Zach Miller's based on? McBride maybe, or sort of all-American kind of?
No, I mean, there will be a few, but there's no outright, obvious Clint Dempsey or McBride was my favourite. But no, it's a bit of a mashup. But anyway, football fiction, there's a massive call for it, obviously.
Yeah. I've often spoke about this. There's yet to be a good sitcom based on football and football fans. Maybe we can see if we can sort of maneuver a sidestep into television at some point. But yeah, it was great to have you both on, guys. Thank you so much. Really a pleasure. And of course, thank you, AF.
All good. Yeah, I love doing that, and I do feel like I should be paying you guys for the therapy that we just undertook. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah, very, very, a lot cheaper than regular therapy, Fulhamish. On that note, hope you guys have a great week. If you're travelling up to Manchester, I'll see you there. Hopefully we can put in a big performance, but enjoy your week. We'll be back on Thursday. Come on, you Whites.